The first thing that hit me that morning wasn't the sound or even the sight. It was the smell. That sharp, oily bite that just doesn't belong anywhere near a pond, especially not the one out back, where I'd spent the past 5 years trying to put my life back together, one slow sunrise at a time. I stepped outside, barefoot on those old boards, and instead of seeing the soft ripple of water and reeds nodding in the breeze, there was this heavy, rainbow film just sitting there, dull and still, like the whole place was holding its breath. And I knew that smell. Diesel fuel. Somebody had dumped it, and I knew in my gut who'd done it. Didn't need to see a name tag or a signature to figure that out. See, every town's got at least one, someone who collects complaints like baseball cards and thinks community means control. Ours was Nancy Glay, president of the Maple Hollow HOA, barely 5'2", always in floral jackets and chunky jewelry, but with a glare that could scorch the paint off your truck. If you'd met me a year before, you'd have called me quiet. A retired science teacher, kept to myself, bought a little patch of land at the edge of the subdivision, tended my garden, fixed what broke, fed the ducks every morning after my wife passed. I just wanted peace. But peace, let me tell you, doesn't last long when bureaucracy starts spreading. Like crabgrass. The pond behind my place was half an acre, maybe a little more, left over from when this whole area was just farmland and not endless rows of beige vinyl. It was my anchor, some days. The only steady thing I had left. But Maple Hollow grew faster than anyone expected, and pretty soon, there were committees and rules, and people who needed something to boss around once their lawns were perfect. Nancy was queen of that world, clipboard in hand, never missing a rumor. First time she showed up, she didn't even bother stepping out of her golf cart. Mr. Callahan, she said always. The last name, always as if reading a charge in court. We've received concerns about the structure behind your fence. She meant my dock. I told her it was older than the neighborhood. She pursed her lips, looked out at the endless sameness, and said, "It's not in harmony with the community aesthetic." I just laughed. That's kind of the point, I told her. Next thing I know, there's a formal letter. Remove all unapproved structures or face fines. I laughed again. My property wasn't even on their plat map, and I had the original survey to prove it. But you know how it goes. Paperwork doesn't care about logic, and Nancy wasn't after compliance anyway. She was after obedience. Week after week, more letters, more threats. Then came the inspectors, clipboards, measuring tape, poking around like they were looking for buried treasure. They even took pictures of my birdhouse. When I called the county, they said the HOA was pushing for environmental review. That's when I realized, to people like Nancy, someone minding their own business looks like rebellion, and rebellion needs to be punished. So I started keeping records. Photos, dates, everything. I figured, you never win an argument unless you can prove it. But for a while, I just waited, hoping reason would win out. It didn't. That spring, the pond dropped almost a foot and the frogs disappeared. When I checked, I found the HOA had run a line straight from my pond to their new fountain, siphoning water without asking. At the next meeting, I confronted Nancy, right there. Muddy boots and all, showed her the photo of the pipe, the valve, the trench. She smiled like a shark in pearls and said, "If you're suggesting illegal activity, please use the proper channels. Otherwise, this is defamation." Yeah, that happened. I walked out before I could say something I'd regret. Things just escalated from there. Anonymous complaints, accusations of storing hazardous chemicals, even animal control called about the ducks. It was like living next to a petty tyrant with a fax machine. And then, just past midnight one night, I saw two figures by the pond. A pickup idling. I yelled out. They took off, but not before dumping something in the water. By morning, it was obvious. Fish dead, ducks gone, that slick film spreading wider. I scooped a jarful and sent it to the university where I used to teach. Diesel, just like I thought. That was it. Something in me went cold. I started tracing every pipeline and map I could find. Turned out, their irrigation drew from the same underground stream as my pond, which meant whatever filth they poured into mine ended up feeding their own water supply. Poetic justice, if you're into that sort of thing. I called the water board, but nothing happened. So I reached out to Dr. Reyes, a hydrologist and old friend. She ran samples from my pond and the HOA's pool. Same contaminants. You realize, she said, they're poisoning themselves. Oh, I realized. We sent our report to the EPA. Meanwhile, Nancy went on the offensive, called a meeting, told everyone I was polluting out of spite, accused me of storing fuel for illegal resale. I watched the video online. She could lie without even blinking. But I had the footage, the truck, the hose, the timestamp, lab results, water flow maps. Uploaded it all. Within hours, the story hit the local paper. Suddenly the HOA was under investigation. The EPA came out, tested everything, and found the truth. Hydrocarbons, fertilizer runoff, metals, the works. 3 days later, the county shut off every communal faucet. Boil water notices, tanker trucks, people panicking. And Nancy, for once, had nothing to say. But I wasn't done. I spent nights assembling every shred of evidence, every violation, every payment. When the EPA report dropped, it named Maple Hollow HOA and their contractors responsible for the contamination. That's when Nancy called, wanting to settle quietly. You want quiet? I told her. You'll get silence when the truth's done speaking. And I hung up. The story blew up, local news, then regional. Nancy tried to resign, but the board refused. Too late. Her brother-in-law, who owned the landscaping company, lost his license after they found years of shady payments. When they raided her office, I stood by my pond, fenced off, healing, a little greener every day. Justice doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's just slow and steady, like water working through stone. A month later, Nancy and her crew faced charges, environmental negligence, falsifying reports. In court, the real clincher wasn't the video, it was the science. Dr. Reyes explained how the contamination flowed downstream, poisoning their own wells. The room went silent. The verdict, guilty on multiple counts, restitution, probation, a hefty fine for the HOA. I was offered money. All I wanted was my pond. Fixed. It took a year, but it healed. The frogs came back first, then the herons. Every morning, I'd sit on the dock, coffee in hand, and watch the water shimmer clean, like it was never touched by malice. Neighbors stopped by, some to apologize, some too embarrassed to speak. I held no grudges. People drink whatever story they're served, until the truth spills over. Nancy moved away, last I heard. She couldn't get another HOA off the ground and was running a storage place somewhere. Fitting, honestly. As for me, I started the Maple Hollow Restoration Trust. Planted trees, ran workshops, taught folks to respect water. Our motto was simple: let it flow clean. The first time I saw kids catching tadpoles in that pond again, I almost cried. Gratitude, not grief. Sometimes late at night, I sit out there, thinking about my father's old saying, water remembers, son. Every secret, every kindness, every slight. He was right. That pond held every memory, good, bad, and ugly. When the time came, it spoke louder than any HOA meeting ever could. Now, most mornings, I just stand there with my coffee, watching the ducks, breathing air that smells like rain again, not diesel. Justice, in the end, isn't about revenge. It's about making things right. Restoration, not punishment. And sometimes the smallest pond in the smallest town ends up teaching everyone a lesson you can't ignore. You can't poison what you depend on and expect to stay clean. So what about you? Would you have fought back or just let it slide? Ever been somewhere the rules got bigger than common sense? Drop your story in the comments, because sometimes the quietest voices are the ones that echo the longest.